can actually hit a record button. So today what we want to do, did somebody have a question? Okay. Today what we want to do is we want to talk about what it takes to be able to share your worship service online with others. Originally, we kind of made it sound like in our advertisement that we were just going to be talking about Zoom. We are going to talk a little bit about Zoom, but we're going to be talking about more than just Zoom. We just want to talk about some of the technology that you could use to present your actual service. So let me bring up my presentation here, and we're going to start going with that. I think that's the wrong screen. See, we do it too. I see what it did. There we go. All right, we want to talk a little bit about streaming and Zoom, and they are not really the same thing, but they are related. And we're going to come back to this picture in a minute, so forgive me for that. So let's start out with the little never have I ever, just a simple little, almost a game. And you don't actually have to raise your hand, but never have I ever. If you've never done this, when I pop this up, let's see, how many of you have never streamed a church service? And I don't care if you hold your hand up or not, but that this is kind of in helping me understand who really wants to be at this session. Just in your heart, you'll know. And the second one is, have you never Zoomed a church service? Now, of course, anybody who has used Zoom wouldn't have to put their hand up here. It would only be if you've never Zoomed an actual church service. And those are kind of the things that we're going to use. In order to set up and use a Zoom event, you have to have a Zoom license. And I don't know how many of you don't have a Zoom license, but if you're going to be actually trying to use Zoom, especially for a church service, you would need a license. We sent out an email a while ago to the pastors that came from the North American division, or from the union, I guess, that talked about how to get a discount on a Zoom license. But in any case, if you need some help on that, you can email Tammy later, and we can get that email forwarded if you didn't get it. So basically, this is what we want to talk about. And by the end of the session, you'll all know what all of these are and how to hook them up. And nah, not really. I'm trying to be funny. That was my joke. Really, for a lot of cases, the only thing that you're going to need to have to be able to Zoom an event or to stream an event, which are two different methods of doing a similar thing, would really just be your laptop or a device of some sort and a camera. It can be as simple as a web camera. And we're going to go through that, but we're really not going to be trying to get you all excited about all of these different pieces here. Each piece is helpful and can help you do additional functions or maybe make things smoother. But for the most part, we're going to be trying to help you get an idea or concept for what it takes to do this on a very basic or a simple level. And you can always upgrade from there. And so let's talk about the differences between Zoom and a stream. Zoom, which what we're using right now, Zoom gives you the ability to let everyone in an event like this have the potential of talking back or responding when I ask a question, raise your hand, things like that. So this is a two-way or it's a two-way conversation with potentially up to, I think, 100 people, depending on your license with Zoom. And your event organizer needs to create an actual, the event, which I talked about. You need a Zoom license for that. A stream is more like if you've ever attended one of our camp meetings. The way the stream would work is we have a streaming company that we use online, and we can connect our system up, a couple of cameras, we can connect them to the online stream, and not just 100 people, but potentially thousands of people can join and watch the event. They could even potentially watch it later, but they can't respond. It's a one-way only. It's kind of like a radio station, you know, in your car. You can listen from anywhere, but you don't have any way to respond outside of getting on the phone and calling. However, this stream does offer some venue of feedback. A lot of them will actually have like a comments section down the side. Like for instance, in Facebook, you can actually respond with comments if those comments are enabled. But that's kind of the difference between Zoom and Stream. And there's different reasons why you might want to do either one, or even both. And so let's talk about that here for a minute. As I've already mentioned, with Zoom, the attendees can respond, or they can even present their screen if you allow that. But the problem with that is if you start getting a large number of people attending, it starts to become complicated, especially if you allow people to open their own microphone. One of the big issues that has happened a number of places. Actually, it happened in the North American Division Worship one morning. They were having it on Zoom, and they just published on their webpage, they published their Zoom link. And when they did that, they could, anybody, any Adventist that wanted to really could join the worship on Monday morning or whichever day of the week they wanted to join. The problem was that some troublemakers used that and did what they call Zoom bombing. They got on the worship, they opened their microphone, they had their camera on, and they had very, very blatant foul language and images of sex, and they just bombed the actual worship. The person controlling the worship was able to cut off the actual entire worship, and they shut worship down for the day. But this is one of the potential things that can happen if you're wanting to do, to share your church service, for instance, with Zoom, which is a two-way medium, and then you allow basically anybody to join your church service, which is one of the things that we want. We often want to do a church service and invite everybody that would like to come. A little bit scary to do that with Zoom. With a stream, however, you get the advantage. Size doesn't matter, but the audience size, and the audience really cannot interfere with your program. If you allow comments, for instance, in Facebook, where people can, you know, just type in little comments that everybody sees, it's possible that someone might put something nasty on there. So we really even kind of discourage that. And if you go to, for instance, It Is Written and some of these other large media organizations, when they stream an event, they actually turn off the comments typically, just as a way of controlling that. But we're just talking about things in general here to think about. There are actually times when you might want to use both Zoom and Stream. For this, it would be maybe something like where you're setting up a panel. This is great for Sabbath school, and you may have actually watched some other churches doing a Sabbath school program where they do this. What you would do is you would start a Zoom, and you may have like 5 people. Sorry, my camera's backwards right now. You might have 5 people who you give the Zoom link to, so that you have a panel. And the panel discusses the Sabbath school lesson, and then you take that actual Zoom event and you live stream it on the internet, so that anybody in the world that wants to watch it can watch. They can watch the 5 people on the panel interacting, but they themselves cannot interact with your panel. This is one of the effective things. It can make it more interesting than just a talking head trying to do a Sabbath school lesson or something like that. But that's a real handy thing. You also, at that point, could set up, and we do this quite often when we're having an event, we would have a panel we would live stream it, and then sometimes we'll have an email account where we show on our website or something where we're advertising our event. We'll actually have an email address. If you'd like to post a question, you post it there. And then you have one person who may be part of the panel who's reading all of those emails as they come in, and the ones that are appropriate, they can actually say, oh, we have an email from this person and this is what they're saying. And that way you can actually take a little bit of participation from just from someone there in general. Yeah, so at this point, thanks. I was just thinking it would be a good place maybe to stop for a minute and just see if anybody has any questions or comments or wanted to talk about some of these concepts before we go on.
I have a question.
Okay.
At this very point, instead of an email, could you use the chat bar to tell people they could use the chat bar to send in questions?
Yeah, so you can use the chat bar if you're in Zoom. The problem with the chat bar is if you let them use the chat bar, everybody that is on your Zoom will see the message. If somebody says something nasty, there is no way to remove it. Even as the administrator, the only thing that you can do is close the meeting. So yes, you can use the chat bar, but probably not. And certainly you couldn't on a stream. I wouldn't recommend it, because if you happen to have an audience of even 40 people and 4 of them are typing, it'll go by so fast that you're not going to be able to even read them all or respond to them all. And some of them may be hostile or nasty. You really don't want everybody probably to see those. And so that's one reason that we try to use email. And so then the person with the email, they can kind of take their time during the panel discussion maybe to go through and say, okay, this one I'm not going to read, this one I'm not going to read. Oh, this is a great question. And then they can interject and actually ask the question. But that's a great question that you had. Anybody else? All right, Ed, I can see you talking, but your mic is muted.
Mickey,
yes,
can you hear me now?
I can.
The difference between an account and a license.
Okay, an account allows you to start and stop your own meetings. The license would control how many. So basically each account is a license. I was kind of using the two terms interchangeably. However, if you have a free account, you can only do a 40-minute or 1-hour program, depending. They keep moving the goalposts on those, and you can only have a certain number of people in your free meeting. I believe that is dropped, or it will drop really soon to like 20 or something. I can't remember, but the license would have to do with how big a license you bought. For instance, you can actually buy a license that lets you do a Zoom with 5,000 people. I can't imagine anybody actually wanting to be able to do that, although, you know, it's possible that we would do something like that maybe for a session. When we're doing our conference session, we have 3,000 some attendees if we have to do it in Zoom, which I really hope we don't have to do. But that the difference really, they're the same thing, but the license implies how many users you actually bought and how long you can run your program for. Anybody else?
Regarding communicating with the people who are on Zoom, I found out it was easier to ask them to send you text message.
With your cell phone. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yes, because on a text message, I have being on Zoom and sometimes dealing with 2-3 screens, it's hard to go to the email, especially in small churches when you don't have so many people to deal with all this technology. Having your cellular phone handy and put it on silent, but have a earpiece to announce you when you have a text message. That's the way I communicate with my participants.
That's a great suggestion. Yeah. The only concern with that is then everybody might get your phone number, but it depends what you're doing and how you're dealing with that. But certainly cell, especially if you're working with your church or people that you're trying to reach. The advantage of a cell would be later on you could talk to them. You could respond a week later, a month later. So how are your studies going? Are you keeping up with your lessons or whatever it is with your Bible studies? So it would be helpful then to have their phone number, because they have actually by texting you, they've given you their phone number. Great suggestion.
Well,
Thank you.
I had to broadcast a funeral, and there were people in New York, Jamaica, and all over this country, and I had about 40 devices, and in each device there were multiple people, but they communicate with me through the text, so I could
Awesome.
answer, but also I had passed to the family their messages.
Absolutely. No, very, very good. Good idea. Thank you. Anyone else? Now, I didn't actually put a slide in about it, but you'll notice that actually you can't notice that Tammy has headphones on. I've got headphones on. We're both in the main conference room here, about 25 feet apart, just for social distancing. But one of the issues with, especially with Zoom, whenever you've got multiple computers in the same area with microphones and speakers, if I didn't use a headphone here, her laptop's microphone could hear my speaker sometimes, and it would cause an echo or a ring. So keep that in mind if you're using a panel specifically, or if you're getting, in fact, anytime you're on a program, especially a live program, consider if you've got multiple computers connecting in, can you consider ask everybody to turn their mics off to keep the noise down, and maybe run some sort of a headphone. Now, Tammy's got the little tiny ones that sit in her ear, and then she covers it with her hair. You can't even tell. Oh, they're there. So anyway, all right, let's go on. Oh yeah, when to use Zoom and Stream, it's more engaging. I skipped that one. So what does it really take? And a lot of you have probably already done this, but like I say, this is the beginners class, the beginners session. So bear with me, and feel free to interject if you have other ideas here that have worked well for you. So what really does it take? Let's talk first about equipment. Some sort of a camera, a device, a laptop, a reliable internet connection. I probably should have put that on my very first slide. How many, let's see, what was it? Have you ever? If you don't have an internet connection at your church, what can you do to stream? And the answer is you can record it and upload the file probably later. But what does it take in terms of a reliable internet connection? If you have enough cell signal, you can actually stream it through your cell phone. Streaming a program or even zooming it will take approximately 200K, so 0.2 megabits. Is that right? Is it 1.4? To do it nicely with video takes 1.4 megabits. Most of your connection, like if you have LTE on your phone, you can actually push past 30, somewhere all the way up to 200 sometimes. But ideally, you actually want to have high-speed internet to the church, usually cable or fiber if you can get it, something like that, because we need to be able to send the signal out. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then you actually have to have a streaming service. So these are the pieces that work together. Your camera, your laptop will then send your service out through your internet to a company that actually does your streaming. Now, if you're using Zoom, the company that does the streaming then is Zoom. And it's not technically a stream, but it's a Zoom, which is a bidirectional, but to that effect, it is analogous. The streaming services that we're going to talk about today, just a little bit, would be Facebook Live, YouTube live stream, Vimeo, Ustream, and Daycast. There are hundreds of different companies that will allow you to stream your service. We're going to spend a little bit of time later talking about the different ones and what's the advantages or challenges of each one. But this is one of the components. If you don't have a streaming service, you're not going to be able to stream your program. And the last thing, maybe the most important thing, is an operator. And I'm going to talk about each one of these in order, but I'm going to go in reverse order here. The operator is probably the most important and sometimes the most difficult part of your whole program. If you don't have somebody at your church that's going to come and operate this equipment for you, or start it and stop it, you may as well give up, because some small churches even have trouble getting somebody to just come and turn a PA on and off. This streaming your services is going to require that you have somebody who's willing to come and actually operate the equipment. But there's things you can do to make it, to help be successful. And the first one is to make it as simple as possible. If you have trouble finding operators, try it with just one laptop, one camera, aim it in. The only thing the operator really needs to do is come in, start the program, and then it just sits there and streams the entire time. Anyone could operate it potentially. So that's probably the biggest thing. But you do need a commitment from members to actually get this up and running. The next thing is a streaming service. There are lots of options for streaming. There are pay options versus free options. Many of our churches are using free streaming services to stream. The most common ones are Facebook and YouTube. They will both allow you to stream your service for free to virtually an unlimited number of recipients. Does not require a Zoom license. There's no licensing at all required. All you have to do is sign up for the free account, go through whatever authentication you have to do to create your free account on one of those, and you're up on a free service. Or you can get a pay service where you pay monthly to be able to stream, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But the problem with the free ones is the free ones have content restrictions. PCI, and Tammy's going to talk about that in a second here. And also some of them will censor you if you espouse certain religious views if you're on the free services. And then, of course, with the free ones, you also have to realize that you will get potential pop-ups, advertisements, sometimes right in the middle of your program. I remember a couple of years ago, we were using a free service here at the office to stream a healthcare program that we were running. EW was doing a good healthcare program. And my wife was watching it at home. Brian Young and I were here, we were streaming it out. And when I got home, my wife said, "Do you realize right in the middle of the program, it popped up an advertisement for an insurance company, and there was some girls in a bikini at the swimming pool?" Okay, these are things that you might actually run into if you're using one of the free services. So, you know, just be aware. If you're using a free service, the way they're paying for their services with ads, a lot of times you can run your service, you won't actually get any ads. Sometimes the ads are just little along the side of your screen or whatever, but that is one of the downsides of using a free service. But really, from a practical standpoint, my recommendation to you is if you're going to start streaming your service, I would recommend that you start with a simple hardware setup. We're going to actually do that in the second session, and plan on using either Facebook or YouTube because they are free. They're super easy to use, but also plan not to stream any music. And that may seem a little bit interesting, but Tammy has a great presentation on why that is one of our suggestions.
It is my turn to talk about music. And let's see, here we go. So basically, let's talk about keeping things legal when you are streaming online. But music copyright, basically that's who owns the music. If you're paying the studio fees and you're recording it, then it's your music. But most of the time what we're looking for is not ours, right? We'll go on YouTube or we'll go somewhere to try to find some music to play, but practically all of that is copyright. Even if it says it's not copyright, it typically is. That can be challenging. So there's a couple different avenues where you can kind of cover yourself with licenses. So the Christian Copyright Licensing International, or CCLI, that allows podcasting and the streaming of worship services only. You can plan on streaming just your worship service. And actually the conference office is in the midst of a huge buy where we're purchasing CCLI for churches that have signed up to receive that. So I'm hoping your church is going to get that. And I see some clapping, so yay, I agree. So it's a good thing. CCLI covers if you're going to print anything, if you're going to project anything, if you're going to create your own songbook, if you're going to create a slide, even if you're going to put a PowerPoint slide online in some way, you need CCLI, and you need to make sure you're including your CCLI number. Every church has a specific number. CCLI will also want you to report a couple times a year on what kind of music you are using and what you're doing. But I will share this PowerPoint and put it up online so you guys can see what it covers, what's not covered. Translating into other languages, different group activities, don't sell or lend copies, and you cannot assign it to another organization. Like, it would be great if just me as the conference office could buy a license and then give it to every church and say you're covered. Oh no, I wish it was that simple. So each church has to have their own license and own number, but we can do a group buy. That's how that's working. So everybody will still have their own information. They also started doing something called CCLI Stream, which is a supplement. It's intended to cover the live stream webcasts on your church's website. It also covers things like YouTube or Facebook. So sometimes they'll still pull you down because you might have music on there. So it's tricky. While it says you're covered because you have CCLI Stream, I'm hoping that that's going to get better, but it will cover those. But as you're beginning, I would say totally just begin. I see you over there. I'll totally just begin with a sermon. I think that's easier. Did you have a comment, Mickey?
Yeah, I had a question, and you already explained this to me earlier, and I was really surprised to hear it. What is an example of something that you can't do with music and streaming it? You were talking about even if you recorded your own child singing a copyrighted song, is that a copyright infringement?
Yes.
So what about if your pianist can, if you give them one of the songs that you'd like them to play and they play that song and you stream that, or you're recording that song, is that a license violation?
So these are all license violations, but if you have CCLI and CCLI Stream and you're on your church website streaming, you should be fine, because you'll have your number there and you'll have your proof that you have these licenses, then you should be fine. The thing that gets tricky is when you go on Facebook and YouTube with music. That's when it gets sticky, because there's these third-party social media platforms are so paranoid. Is that a good way to say it? They're so scared of music copyrights, and they don't, even though you have your license and you put everything in there, oftentimes they'll pull you down. Also, here's an example. So say you are doing music, and here's an example of how they want you to share that. And you typically just put this information on the last slide. So the name and the song and when it was copywritten, and here's where you're sharing your CCLI number. And it needs to be there somewhere. And I typically always just put it on the last slide of the song. So every song that you're doing, you need to have it on every song. On the end of every slide of every song. Does that make sense? And then the reporting, like I talked about that earlier, what you're going to want to do, they'll send you an email and say, hey, what have you been doing the last 6 months? Or these are your 6 months to record. So you just keep track of what songs you've been sharing on your website or whatever platform you're using. And then you just go online and put the information in, and it's really pretty easy, and it just takes a few minutes. I get to do that. I'm actually doing it right now for the conference office. CCLI uses the money to pay the royalties for the music that's been used. So that's why you're paying a fee. No, I don't see the chat, but I can look. No, I'm not seeing it. Sorry.
Okay. What about hymns from the SDA hymnal?
Okay. So some hymns from the hymnal, some songs from the hymnal are going to be public domain and others are not. So there's a place where you can go on CCLI or CCLI Stream or Song Select, and you can kind of check which one. I can't remember which one, but you can go look and see if they're public domain or not. So you'll be surprised. Some will be public domain and you can share them, and some will not. So you kind of have to check. I was surprised at some of the ones that weren't. I thought, well, this is a song that's been around for a long time. Certainly it doesn't have royalties and a license, but it does. So it depends on the publishing company behind it and what they're doing to it and what the copyright laws are. So the laws are different, but it really depends on the publishing house and how active they are with maintaining the rights to that song. Can you change the song lyrics to fit your church's preferences? Theology, no, you cannot. You're free to arrange songs as you wish, as long as it doesn't change the melody, lyrics, or fundamental character. So that kind of gets real sticky too. You're always welcome to go and Google CCLI. And they have
Tammy, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
This is Dean Reed.
Hey,
I
Dean.
thought I heard you say that many of the hymns in our hymnal are problematic too. Could you explain that a little bit more? I didn't realize that was true.
Yeah, so some of them, and I can't tell you which ones, we have to look it up. So some of them, just because they're in the hymnal doesn't mean they're public domain. So public domain means that anybody can use it. You can use the lyrics, you can use the melody, you can use any of it, and you can do whatever, because it's been around for a long time. And you would think they would all be okay, right? Well, they're not. Not all songs in the hymnal are automatically public domain. Some of them have copyright laws attached to them still, and they still are gathering the royalties. So they're not all, just because they're in the hymnal doesn't give you a free pass. I guess that's
So
right.
how would we know which ones are safe?
So you have to go look them up.
You have to look it up.
You can go look them up, and that's Song Select, which is part of CCLI, and it's just part of the program, and you can go in there and do a search.
Or you can just put the CCLI number at the bottom of every song.
Right, and I'm working on making sure that every church has a CCLI number. I'm in the midst of that right now. And then all you do is put the CCLI number. And if you're just singing it in church, that's fine. If you're singing it online, that's when stuff gets sticky. And even if you're in church and you're projecting it, you should, even if it's not streamed and you're just in a church and you're singing, you should still, at the end of every song, put your CCLI number. And that was, I can't remember. I think it was this. So you see this information right here. It's an example of how they want you to put at the end of the songs that this is what's happening. Yeah, I wish it was a blanket thing. And hey, just because it's here, it's
And that's for each song. If you have 3 songs, each one has to have that at the end of the song.
that's correct. Yes. Yep. Good
So
question.
I know my clerk Judy is online listening to this too. At Griffin, we live stream the whole service, and I know it's on YouTube. We get a copyright hit, but we're not selling it, so they don't censor the stream at all.
Well, that's good.
But-
Maybe you just haven't been, maybe you haven't put a song up where you've been lucky, where you haven't put a song up where you've been in trouble. But if you have the CCLI number and you have the stream, you should be okay on YouTube if you're utilizing both of those. But even then,
Okay.
sometimes they'll just yank you. So you've got to be careful. And
So
music-
we could just put that up on that information, the Hallelujah 2018 good music, etc.,
and then your number, your CCLI.
on a slide at the end or beginning of the
I
song.
even just put it at, you're putting the words, right? I'm guessing you're putting the words up.
Yes.
Okay, so I would just put it on the last slide of those last words, right? So here's the
Okay.
end of the song, and then just put it underneath all that. That's what I always
Okay,
do. I don't
so-
create
so
a whole
you-
slide
so-
for it.
So since Judy's on listening to this, Mrs. Pillsbury, make sure you write that down, Judy. Thanks.
Well, and I'll put this up online too, so you guys will have it. And this whole session will be recorded if you need to go back and refer.
Thank you.
Hey, Tammy, excuse me. I have a question real quick.
Yeah.
Do we need a separate license number for the CCLI stream or just a single CCLI number?
And that's a good question. I'm pretty sure it's just that you use the CCLI number,
Okay.
but I'll double check that.
Okay. For probably because right now we just have a CCLI number.
Yeah.
But, I realized later on they came up with the streaming because a lot of people are streaming, and I don't think we have that. We do Zoom only. So we put all the numbers on every single slide just to be safe, because you never know when somebody pops in.
Yeah.
But we don't have the CCLI streaming as yet. So I was just curious, is that another number, or will they update that number to say?
Yeah, I'll do a quick search on that and I'll put something in the chat. I'll look that up. I think it's the same thing,
Tammy?
but I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tammy, if I'm not mistaken, because we've just upgraded CCLI, and it's
Okay.
still the same number, and that number represents your package you have with them,
Good.
which can
Okay,
be
good.
different areas. One of the songs I was going to say, that song, "We Have This Hope,"
Mhm.
that's not copyrighted. I mean, you can't, they didn't even offer to sell the copyright. So that's one song for sure you can't put out there.
Yeah, so there's several songs like that. You just have to
Yeah.
be really careful. But having the CCLI kind of gives you you can do this. It's okay. So there's issues to sort through. We're talking about, and these are some more issues. As part of YouTube, the upload process, they will ask you whether your video includes copyrighted content. For church services that include music, you need to say yes, and then put in your copyright information or your CCLI information. And see, the Facebook algorithms and search bots, they're really vigilant, and they're out there looking for copyright violations. So it's bot driven. It does not initially, but you should be covered by the licensing streaming information. So, but still, it's fun. There's also something called CVLI. So, and that's if you're sharing any kind of videos. And that's an extra added license that you can get that if you are video heavy in your church, you can have that.
Tammy?
Yeah.
There's a question on chat that I'd like to know the answer of too.
Yeah, would you read it to me? That'd be great.
Yeah, do you have an idea of when this process will be completed and we'll all have our numbers?
I don't know that yet. I've just been compiling, actually Heidi Milton's been helping me compile all the data and all the responses from everybody, because I had to ask everybody which they wanted, this anyway, all the specifics on everything. And so we're getting that all together, and I'm hoping this week we can send it off to CCLI and then get the quote back and then kind of get things rolling. So I'm hoping this month, hopeful. They're pretty quick on getting back to us, so I'm hopeful that it will be this month.
Tammy, I wanted to add one more thing. We have had several churches that have contacted us and they have had their stream blocked either by YouTube or Facebook over music streaming. The problem with these free ones, at least so far, is even when you have a CCLI number and you put it in your slide, their algorithm hears a copyrighted song and you immediately get this automated response that says your stream was canceled. You are now in violation. If you do it again, we're going to fine you $250,000. Right. I mean, it's really aggravating. And that's one reason that if you're streaming your service, you can avoid a certain amount of trouble just by either muting the songs, not putting them up, or starting your stream without music if you're using the free service. But that is the big advantage of using a pay service. If you're using one of the services the streaming services where you pay for your stream, then they're not trying to police what you're putting on because you're on a pay service. It's with the free services where they're trying to police them. And there are trolls who just go through looking at, for instance, churches. There's a lot of anti-church hate right now, it seems like. And there's a lot of people who are just going through and trying to find anybody that's in violation and report them in hopes of getting some sort of either getting you shut down or potentially getting some sort of a reward for turning you in type of a thing. So that's one of the difficult issues right now is music and streaming, and it can kind of get you through the back door. You can have your Zoom service where they're not policing it. You could then record it and then put that up on, let's say, your Facebook page for people to watch later. And then you can get bit months from now because somebody finally found out that you had a Zoom stream that you were then letting people watch later, where you didn't have the correct coverage. I mean, it's just a little bit scary right now if you're on a free service. Thanks.
Yeah, so thanks, Mickey. It's just sticky. Like the easiest thing to do if you really wanted to incorporate music and invite people is to just hold it on your website through a streaming service, and then use your CCLI and your stream and all of those that you have, that you already have permission to be sharing music. It's so sticky. If you do have issues with Facebook and they'll contact you, then you have to correspond with them. And the same thing with YouTube. So it's difficult. I've had one instance where we went and asked somebody if we could use a video on YouTube, and they got permission, but we only shared it on Zoom. So we didn't actually stream it or have it out there in the public. And so it worked fine. But yeah, YouTube is particularly tricky as well. So I'm going to put this up. There's more information. There's also CCS, which is just kind of a competition to CCLI and the stream option. So there are other options. We're kind of looking at CCLI and CVLI and all that, those whole packages, but there are other options. So, and thank you. And I'm still here. So if there's other questions as we go along, this is always kind of a hot topic because music brings so much to the worship experience. So it's so challenging to have to try to figure out legally how to make this happen without, your church getting sued, because you don't want that.
I was going to say that we got blocked from YouTube one time, and I found out that we were streaming the original recording. We restreamed something that was on the internet, and they shut us down. And they said that's what we're set up to do. If you're going to stream the original copyrighted music, that's where you get in trouble. You've got the copyright to sing it, play it, reproduce stuff. But if you go touching the original, that's where you get in trouble.
Yeah, so I always tell people, if you're going to do that, if you want to be doing music, have someone perform it. Don't play YouTube.
Those are all very helpful. Thank you very much, Jamie. Let's see. So let's go back to this minimum setup right here. I don't know if you remember, but really the very, very basic minimum that you could need to do your streaming service. Let me go back to the very first slide. Let's see if I can do that here. That wasn't it. If you notice in this picture, what they've got here is they've got a cell phone with this fancy little microphone that's clipped in just to give a little bit better audio. And then looks like he's got, I'm going to guess, about an $1,800 tripod, which of course you don't really need. You just need something. But the point is, you could do your entire streaming with just a cell phone, with its built-in camera, with its built-in microphone, and some sort of a little stand or some sort of clip to hold it and aim it at the speaker. That's really the very minimum. Super, super simple. You could even use your data service to do that, so you did it without even having internet at your church. Let me get back to where I was here. But that's the most basic operation that I can see to do that with. Okay. But the other way that most of us would do it would be either with a desktop or a laptop, and probably a webcam. you could do it with your laptop, and then you could turn your laptop around, you know, and aim it at the stage, but then you can't really see what it's doing unless you're streaming it yourself. You know, you can tip it down, but it'd be more handy if you had an external little webcam. I've got one over there. I'll show it to you in a minute. And then for the basic thing, you just use your free account with YouTube or Facebook. And I'm actually going to demonstrate that in a few minutes here. Technical hurdles that you might run into: audio quality. This is, if you're going to have trouble with something, this is probably where you're going to have some issues, because let's say that you're using the microphone, ideally not this one, but you're using a microphone in your phone, or if you have one on your camera, your webcam, for instance, that might be near the back of the service, or maybe somewhere in the middle of the church, depending how you set yours up. If somebody coughs right next to the camera, that's going to complete, or a baby starts crying, you're going to have that stepping on the quality of the actual audio that you're doing. There's little things like that you could run into. Another thing is framing your service well on the screen. And again, I'm going to show you this in a few minutes, but if you've got just one camera at the back and the speaker happens to be using PowerPoint, so now they're going to be there talking, you really can't see the PowerPoint unless it's just framed correctly, right? Like over their shoulder or something like that. You know, and you're going to run into some issues there. PowerPoint. And then if the speaker's a pacer, you know, you got to have somebody back there moving the camera back and forth, or you just got to have the, my camera's backwards. You know, you just might have to just keep widening your shot until you're taking in the whole screen, and then you can hardly see the speaker up front. So those are some of the issues that you might run into. And this one is big. We're going to have fun with this one in a minute. Lighting. If you're going to stream, buy some lights. I don't really care what they are, but buy some lights and shine them on on the face of the speaker. And we'll actually do that here in a minute. With your audio, we talked a little bit about this, but if you're going to be working with the audio that's coming from your camera, whether it's a webcam or something else, that'll work. But the first thing that you would want to start working towards, if you're improving now on your system after you get your stuff going, try to get to the place where you're maybe connecting your sound in from your soundboard. That will require potentially an adapter, and there's 100 ways to do that. You can run into some issues there, but the cleaner, the better the audio that you're getting and you're embedding in your stream, the happier that you'll be with your program as well. And cameras. And this is kind of a fun thing too. For cameras, use the best camera that you can afford, but don't spend a lot of money on a camera. A lot of churches have spent, you know, $400, $800, $1,200, $2,500 on cameras. You can certainly do that, and you get good results. One of the options that you can use, in addition to just a webcam, let me just grab it, show it to you here. This is like a $40 webcam, and you just hook it on your laptop or on your tripod or your desktop, whatever, and it's just got a regular USB connector, and when you plug it in, it works. You know, there's pretty much no setup at all, but that would let you, you know, aim your camera to your stage or whatever it is that you're doing, but you're going to get a very, very wide shot, because most of these webcams have a very, very wide viewing angle. A better option would be, you know, something like this. It's a little video recorder. I actually found some of these on Facebook Marketplace this week for $50, $60, something like that. If you want to try something like this, the advantage of something like this is it's got a long zoom lens, and so you can actually set it somewhere and zoom way in and just frame your shot well. If you're going to get something, make sure that it has like a HDMI out. HDMI is definitely what you're going to want to use. for your input on your camera, and you'll actually need a little adapter, but I can help you talk about that at some point. And then, of course, lighting. Lighting makes such a difference, and especially if you've got a stage that is backlit, maybe if you have windows behind the stage or anything like that, but just a little bit of lighting can just bring your skin tones out. You just bring a little bit of interest and brighten your face. Right now, my lighting is not bad here because I've got the light shining into my face. If I was to turn around and come from the other angle, just because of the way the room is set up, you lose an awful lot. And lighting is very, very inexpensive, simple. You can actually use virtually any light. It can be pretty yellow, you know, just like an incandescent with a dimmer. Make sure the dimmer is not buzzing electronically, but you can use something as simple as that, or you can buy more expensive stage lighting and put anything like that in just to put some light on your faces, which makes a huge, huge difference. And the last thing that I want to talk about is the long-term payoff. How would you measure the success of your streams that you're running for your church programs? In most cases, you would probably, well, you might be tempted to look at it and say, well, only 8 people watched. Well, if only 8 people watched and we spent, you know, $500 to set the stream up, and then we have internet costs and all this stuff, did we get something really for our money? But I would like to point out that, let me tell you a brief story. When I first went to the Philippines, I went there and worked at the division office in the IT department a few years ago. And when I got there, one of the things that they asked me to do was to upgrade their website. So I got on to the website and I was going through just looking at their existing website before we started to do our upgrades. And one of the reports that I ran showed, I wanted to know which pages people were actually looking at on our current website. And one of the things that I found was the #1 visited site on our webpage was a sermon that we didn't know was still there. Someone had recorded it several years before. They had put it on the website where it got a link, and then they were no longer pointing any pages to that link, but Google hadn't forgotten about that website. And when people were searching certain topics, this was one of the options that they would come up, was this sermon, which was still listed on our website. And we were getting 30 or 40 people every single month watching that sermon that we didn't even know was there. Okay, to me, that's the long-term payoff by putting your sermons online. So in order to do that, make sure, I mean, if you put them up live, that's great, but make sure that you keep them up after the service is over. I think you'll find that within a month or two, more people will rewatch or watch the sermon later than will actually watch it up front. For several years here at Calhoun, we've been streaming, and some Sabbaths we would only hit 7 people that watched it live. And you think, man, we have 2 operators there, we have all this equipment and only 2 people. But if you look back to see who watched it, who watched the one that we had 2 months ago, at that point we would suddenly find that we may have had 50, 60, 70, 100 people watch this sermon later. And of course, that then comes into the category, in my opinion, of the leaves of autumn that Ellen White is talking about. And so that's my, that brings my little presentation here to an end. There were some comments here. Did anybody have any questions or comments here?
I had a question. I couldn't find how to get on at the beginning. It was in spam. And I wondered, is this recorded or anything where I can see the beginning again?
Go ahead, Tammy. It is being recorded, yes. And so we're going to post that.
And where would I find it to see it later?
Yeah, so you'll just need to go to our website, to the events page, the same page, and it will put it right there.
Okay, and when will that show up?
Sometime this next week, hopefully.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it won't be today. I'm sorry. So, all right. Well, Tammy, I think I'm ready to give people a break for a couple minutes before we start our next session. Did you have anything else? Oh, thank you. I totally forgot. Now, one of the things we wanted to do, just for fun, is... Oh, I'm still on. Thank you. All right. One of the things that we wanted to do was, we're going to have a door prize. So Tammy has printed out everybody who registered before 8, right? Today. Okay. And we have a little video camera that we're going to give away as a door prize. It is a great little thing. It comes in a waterproof housing. You can shoot 1080p video as well as take some pretty decent little pictures with it. It's a very cute little camera to play with. It's designed for you. It's kind of like a GoPro where you could run around and take video or pictures of something. There's a little memory card that you have to provide, that you put in. But we are going to be drawing we're going to have a drawing for this right now. And if you win, you have to be present to win. We will mail it to you, and you can use it. You can give it to somebody, whatever you want to do. But this is a cross tour. It's actually a generic camera. Yes, we are ready.
I drew the name of Jan House.
Jan House, are you here?
Is Jan here?
Give you a minute. I thought I saw her earlier.
I know I don't see her now though.
Okay.
All right. Draw another name.
Sorry, Jan.
Alma Guthrie. Let's see. We had like 50 people register, so.
Yeah, our registry also covered the next meeting, so.
Benny Curl.
Betty Curl?
Benny
Benny?
Curl.
I thought Benny was on earlier.
He was.
Oh, he left too soon.
Yep.
All right, well, we're gonna keep going.
Edward Skorts.
Here.
He's
Edward
here.
Skorts. Oh, he's not here? Oh, he's
right
not.
there. I
Oh,
see him.
Edward, is it?
Come on.
I don't see him any.
Come
Oh,
on,
there he is.
Come on, Mickey. Come on, Mickey.
All right, we're gonna send this to you, Ed.
Great.
And hope you have some fun with it. It's a cute little camera. You can even go diving with it next time you go down to Florida. So,
Thank you. Appreciate that.
all right. And we have 1 minute. We're gonna actually probably take 2, and we will start up in just a moment. Thanks everyone for joining us. Oh, there will be another door prize.
I hope it's the same door prize.